Did you know that only 3% of people over 70 manage to do certain things that seem simple but are actually key to living a fulfilling and satisfying life at this stage? I know it sounds like a made-up number, doesn't it? But hold on. Before you think we're talking about climbing mountains or running marathons, let me tell you that what we're going to cover today is much deeper than that, and far more important. Aging doesn't have to be a sentence of resignation or loss. In fact, the next few minutes could open your eyes to an entirely new way of seeing this stage of life, a way that very few discover. Today, we're going to talk about the 10 things that only 3% of people over 70 manage to do, not because they're impossible, but because they require a change in mindset, a shift in how we approach each day. And that, my friend, is more powerful than any fitness routine. But of course, this also means facing some truths you may not want to hear, but trust me, it's better to face them now than to let them catch up with us later. If you're ready to break the mold, to view life from a completely different perspective, and most importantly, to make the most of the time ahead with greater wisdom, then stay with me until the end of this video. I promise you won't regret it. My name is Gabriel, and if this is your first time here, I invite you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let's get started. Number 1, embrace uncertainty and impermanence with calm. Let's talk about uncertainty. You know what I'm talking about, right? That uncomfortable feeling of not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow, next month, or next year. And it doesn't matter if you're 20, 50, or 80 years old, uncertainty is always there, like a shadow following us around. But let's be honest, by the time we hit 70, that shadow starts to feel a little heavier, doesn't it? Changes in health, in relationships, in our place in the world, everything seems to be in constant motion, and that, my friend, can drive us mad if we don't handle it well. Here's where Stoicism comes in, and I'm going to share something that could save you from a few new gray hairs. The Stoics, those wise folks who lived thousands of years ago, knew that life is a constant ebb and flow. Everything changes, everything. And instead of fighting against it, they found a way to accept it with calm. Instead of stressing out because things weren't as they wanted, they simply said, well, that's life, let's flow with it. And they called it amor fati, which basically means love your fate as it is, with its highs, lows, and surprises. But of course, that sounds easy in theory, right? Accepting uncertainty, loving fate. But putting it into practice is another story. So how do we actually do this when life doesn't go as we'd hoped? When we get health news we don't like, or circumstances change without warning, how do we keep our sanity? Start with what you can control. And here's the first great lesson from the Stoics. You can't control everything that happens to you, but you can always control how you respond. It sounds simple, but it's more powerful than you think. Instead of worrying about what's coming, which, let's be honest, is what we usually do, you can focus on what you're doing today, right now. You can control how you react to bad news, how you choose to face a tough day, or how you treat the people around you. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoics, put it bluntly, choose not to be harmed, and you won't be. Brutal, isn't it? It's like saying, life can throw whatever it wants at you, but you decide if it affects you. And it's true. Sometimes we get caught in a loop of negative thoughts, dwelling on what might happen, when in reality, it hasn't happened yet. It's uncertainty itself that's bothering us, not reality. Let me suggest an exercise. Next time you feel that uncertainty is taking over, pause and ask yourself, what can I control right now? Maybe you can't control the results of a medical test or whether the weather will be good tomorrow, but you can control how you spend today. You can control whether you complain about the unknown or focus on the small things you can manage. Small, but significant. And don't worry, you're not alone in this. None of us really knows what's coming in the next few years. The trick is to make peace with that fact, because as a Stoic phrase says, life is change. Change is the only constant. So instead of fighting the tide, learn to surf it. One last thing. Remember, accepting uncertainty is not the same as giving up. We're not talking about surrendering to whatever comes, but about living with calm, knowing that, come what may, we can adapt and move forward. It's like being in the middle of a storm. You can't stop the rain, but you can find shelter. And more importantly, you can choose not to let it affect you more than necessary. So the next time you feel like uncertainty is about to crush you, take a deep breath and say, "This too shall pass." Because it will, one way or another. And the best thing you can do is be ready, with a calm mind and a strong heart. Number 2, maintaining emotional independence through self-discipline. Emotional independence. It sounds like a fantasy, doesn't it? Especially as we reach a stage in life where we might rely more on others, whether for physical help or simply for company. But let me tell you something. True independence isn't about whether someone helps you cross the street or with groceries. Emotional independence is much more powerful than that. The Stoics understood this well. We can't control what the world throws at us, but we can control how we respond. And this is where self-discipline comes in. It's not about becoming emotionless, not at all. It's about training our minds not to be swayed by every little thing that happens around us. I know it's easy to get caught up in drama, bad news, someone saying something we don't like. But what if you could learn to apply a filter? Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, said something like this: "It's not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. It's not what happens, but what you decide to make of it. If someone offends you, if life doesn't go as you'd hoped, you can choose how to respond." And that, my friend, is emotional independence. How do you achieve it? Start small. Each time something angers or bothers you, ask yourself, is this worth letting it control my day? Most of the time, the answer is no. If you practice this enough, you'll see that you can keep your inner peace no matter what's happening outside. That's true power. See what I mean? Emotional independence is more valuable than anything else you might lose over time. And best of all, it's entirely in your hands. Number 3, redefining the concept of success and fulfillment in old age. Let's talk about success. Society has ingrained in us the idea that success means a huge house, a big bank account, and maybe a framed photo with someone famous. But when you reach a certain age, you realize that none of that holds the same value it once did. And if we keep measuring success by the standards we had at 30, well, we're probably going to feel like we've failed. And that, my friend, is a dangerous trap. The writer Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and creator of logotherapy, said something I love. Success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue. Instead of chasing external achievements, true success in old age lies in finding fulfillment in who you are, not in what you own. The house may be smaller. The income may not be what it once was. Perfect. Because now you can focus on what truly matters: the wisdom you've gathered, the quality of your relationships, and those peaceful moments that were once so hard to come by. So redefine success. Take a pause and ask yourself, what genuinely brings me fulfillment now? Maybe it's a quiet conversation, an afternoon with loved ones, or the simple pleasure of a book that makes you think. These small moments, the ones that can't be measured by a bank balance or a list of accomplishments, are what define true fulfillment at this stage. Remember what Maya Angelou said: success is liking yourself, liking what you do, and liking how you do it. Isn't that the real achievement? Number 4, transforming pain and loss into personal growth. Pain and loss are inevitable, especially as we accumulate more years of life. But what many fail to see is that behind that suffering, there can be an opportunity. And no, I'm not saying we should put on a forced smile in the face of every hardship. I'm talking about using that pain as a springboard for growth. Psychiatrist Carl Jung said, Pain will either destroy you or transform you. And here's the catch: you decide what it does to you. Throughout life, we all experience losses. By 70, you may have lost friends, partners, and even certain physical abilities. It's hard, but life, with all its challenges, also gives us a choice. Do we remain in the pain or use it as fuel to transform ourselves? A great example of this is the Paralympian Stephen Hawking. His body deteriorated gradually, but his mind, curiosity, and sense of humor only grew stronger. He didn't stay in self-pity. He chose to transform his life from where he was, not from what he had lost. How can we apply this in daily life? First, allow yourself to feel the pain. Don't deny it's there. Then ask, what can I learn from this? Every loss brings a lesson, a way to reframe life and come out stronger. Maybe it's learning to appreciate what you still have, discovering a new way of connecting, or simply finding peace in the chaos. Pain is a part of life, but growing from it, that's your choice. Number 5, cultivating relationships based on virtue, not need. At a certain age, relationships take on a central role in our lives, but let's be honest, some relationships can become a bit complicated. It's easy to fall into patterns of dependence or to hold on to friendships that survive only out of habit. Here's where it gets interesting. In old age, relationships shouldn't just be about exchanging favors or providing company. They should be a source of mutual growth. Imagine each relationship as a plant. If you water it only enough to keep it alive, it will grow just enough to survive. But if you nurture it with virtues like honesty, respect, and gratitude, that plant will thrive and grow strong. Relationships built on need. I need you to be there so I don't feel alone. I need you to help me with this or that. Tend to wither sooner or later. Why? Because they're based on what's lacking, not on what's shared. This brings to mind contemporary philosopher Alain de Botton's idea that relationships should be based on mutual admiration. In other words, being with someone because, together, you both become better versions of yourselves. In old age, this is more important than ever. It's not about accumulating friends or visits, it's about surrounding yourself with people who help you grow, who inspire you, and most importantly, who share your values. The question to ask yourself is, do the people in my life lift me up or hold me back? If it's not the first, it might be time to rethink some relationships. Because at this point, the last thing we need is someone who burdens us with unnecessary drama or negativity. What we want is company that adds to our lives, not takes away. So cultivate your relationships like a garden, choose carefully which plants to keep and which are best left behind. If you're enjoying this video so far and feel you're discovering new ways to use Stoic wisdom, to face the challenges of aging with more calm and clarity, I invite you to subscribe and hit the like button to support this content. Stay tuned, because the most eye-opening insights are still to come. And if you're committed to finding balance and wisdom in this stage of life, I have a final reflection that could completely change your perspective. And tell me, where are you tuning in from? I'd love to know. Let's continue. Number 6, accepting death as part of life. This is the topic everyone tries to avoid. But guess what? We can't escape death, so why not learn to accept it? Talking about death isn't easy, especially as we reach an age where we feel its shadow a bit closer. But here's an uncomfortable truth. The more we avoid thinking about death, the more it scares us. And the more fear we have, the less we enjoy the life we have. There's a quote from Steve Jobs that captures this perfectly. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. Death, instead of being a constant threat, can be a motivator. When you remember that time is limited, Every day, every moment becomes valuable. Instead of wasting time on useless worries or things that don't really matter, you start to focus on what's essential. So how do we apply this in daily life? First, by letting go of some of the fear. Memento mori, as the Stoics said, remember that you will die, but not in a morbid way. Instead, as a reminder that life, precisely because it's finite, should be lived with purpose. Every morning can be a new opportunity to enjoy what you already have, rather than focusing on what's missing. Fear of death is natural, but accepting it is freeing. It's not about waiting for it to come, but about living fully until the last moment. And if you think about it, knowing this journey has an end makes it that much more interesting, don't you think? Number 7, prioritizing the health of the soul over the health of the body. It's only natural that as we age, we pay more attention to our physical health. We worry about our diet, medications, doctor visits, all to keep the body functioning. But what about the soul? Because here's the truth. You can have the healthiest body in the world, but if the soul is neglected, the wear and tear is inevitable. The Dalai Lama has a quote that fits perfectly here. Man sacrifices his health in order to make money. Then he sacrifices his money to recuperate his health. Throughout life, we often pour our energy into the physical, the material, and overlook the internal. But the health of the soul doesn't age. It can always be strengthened. Caring for the soul means cultivating serenity, gratitude, patience, empathy, all those virtues we sometimes leave aside while worrying about the physical. While the body has limits, the soul does not. The key question is, how are you nourishing your inner self? Are you dedicating time to reflect, to learn, to enjoy moments of peace and connection with others? Of course, I'm not saying to ignore the body, but remember that a soul at peace can bear more than any strong muscle. So, the next time you're concerned about a physical ailment, do a quick checkup on your inner health too. How is your emotional and spiritual well-being? True balance comes when you care for both. Number 8, keeping an open mind for lifelong learning. There's a ridiculous idea that floats around, that at a certain age, you can't learn anything new. As if the brain had an expiration date, right? Well, nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, only 1% of people over 70 actively seek new knowledge. And here's a secret, that 1% has a younger mind than many people in their 30s. Learning isn't about accumulating facts or becoming a tech expert, although learning to use WhatsApp without asking for help every 2 minutes wouldn't hurt. It's about keeping curiosity alive, that spark that connects us with the world. Albert Einstein said, "A mind that opens to a new idea never returns to its original size." Each time you learn something new, even something small, you're exercising your brain and keeping it in shape. And no, you don't need to enroll in college to do this. Just ask questions, read, listen to others, and never lose the habit of wanting to understand something new each day. The mind, like the body, needs movement. If you keep it still, it stagnates. So why not learn to play an instrument, read about a topic that's always intrigued you, or even ask your grandchildren uncomfortable questions to understand what on earth is going on with memes? Age is no barrier to learning. In fact, this can be the best time to learn, because now you're doing it not out of obligation, but for the pure joy of it. Number 9, living with radical gratitude regardless of circumstances. At this stage in life, it's easy to fall into the trap of focusing on what we no longer have: youth, certain physical abilities, people who are no longer here. It's understandable, but it's also dangerous, because when you only focus on what's missing, you forget all that you still have. This is where radical gratitude comes in. It's not the typical "thank you for the food" kind of gratitude, though that matters too, but a whole approach to life where you deliberately choose to focus on the positive, no matter what's happening around you. Writer Melody Beattie sums it up beautifully. Gratitude makes what we have enough. It doesn't matter if your body no longer responds like it used to, or if the world seems to move too fast to keep up. What matters is learning to find satisfaction in what you have right now. It's almost like a superpower. Of course, it's not easy. Living with radical gratitude means that even in the toughest moments, when everything seems against you, you're still able to say, "There's something to be grateful for here." It might not be obvious at first, but if you think about it, there's always something. Maybe it's the lesson you're learning, the support of someone close, or simply the fact that you're here, experiencing life as it is. Here's a suggestion. Each day, find 3 things to be grateful for, even if they're small. A well-made coffee, an unexpected call, a good book. Over time, you'll notice how this attitude changes your outlook on the world. Because when you decide there's always something to be grateful for, the focus shifts from what's missing to what you already have. Number 10. Being a model of wisdom and serenity for future generations. At this stage in life, you've probably realized something important. It's not always about what we achieve or accumulate, but about what we leave behind. And I'm not talking about material possessions. The true legacy we leave is the example of how we've lived. Whether you like it or not, younger generations are watching. And here's where you become a guide, that lighthouse of wisdom and serenity. The Stoics believed that the greatest virtue is consistency, having actions that reflect your values. Think about this. Your children, grandchildren, or even younger friends won't remember every piece of advice you gave, but they will remember how you handled adversity, how you faced change, and how you lived with dignity, even in the toughest moments. Psychologist and author William James has a quote that I think is key. "The best use of life is to spend it on something that will outlast it." What outlasts us most is not our things, but our examples. If you live with serenity, acceptance, and gratitude, others will see it, and they'll learn more from that than from any theoretical lesson. So, instead of worrying about what you've achieved so far, start thinking about how you live each day. Are you being an example of strength, wisdom, patience? Because believe me, someone out there is watching, and without you even knowing it, your life might be teaching others more than you imagine. Your best legacy will be as a living example of how to face life with all its ups and downs with grace and serenity. And so we reach the end of this journey. We've talked about difficult things, those truths we sometimes prefer not to face head-on. But if there's one thing I want you to take away from today, it's this. Life, in every stage, remains an opportunity. Every day we live, no matter how many years we've accumulated, is a fresh chance to learn, to grow, and above all, to live with purpose. If something resonated with you from what we've discussed, I encourage you to put it into practice. It's not about achieving everything overnight, but about beginning, step by step, with patience and determination. Because in the end, it's not what we face that defines our lives. It's how we choose to face each challenge with serenity, gratitude, and wisdom. Now, before I say goodbye, let me tell you something. If you're here, if you've made it to this point, it's because you're serious about your personal growth. And that's no small thing. It's worthy of admiration. So to know who the committed ones are who've stayed until the end, I'd like you to comment with the phrase, "I am Stoic," and let me know where you're listening from. I'd love to know which country you're connected from, and most of all, to know who's joining me on this journey of self-discovery. My name is Gabriel, and if it's your first time visiting this channel, I invite you to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the upcoming topics we'll be exploring. And remember to share this video with your loved ones. Sometimes, all it takes is a new perspective, and who knows, these words might be just the push someone close to you needs today. See you in the next video, and until then, Keep cultivating the serenity and wisdom that will make you a living example of a life well lived.